I would say to anyone who's younger, and especially because I have a son as well, that get an idea of what you want to do, work towards it. It might not even be the career path that you want to do, but it will put you in good standing to have things to target yourself toward and to work toward. It sets you up very, very well. I think it's difficult to say when you're young what you want to do because things in life change, and things you'll do now will be completely different from things you'll want to do in 3 years' time. I think people work towards materialistic things quite a lot, and you'll never want anything you have. Well, you'll never want anything you want now in 3 years' time. Things change. Straightforward hire purchase finance when you would fund a product and own it at the end of the payments complete. Or you could have something called a PCP when you would buy a car and you'd have a final payment, which is somewhat like a pre-calculated settlement figure. So you would therefore have slightly cheaper monthly payments in the interim. You could have contract hire when you're renting a product over a set period of time. So in the world of finance, there is so many things that you can do. People can borrow money against houses. You can borrow money against property. So yeah, it's really endless. If someone wants to get into the world of finance, there is so many things you can do. I think that's a very big area that I see banks like Lloyds and NatWest and big, high street banks that people would know branching out into that area a lot more now because there's a very big gap in the market for small business, I think, and banks want to be in those areas when they can fund shop fronts, if someone owns a shop and they want to borrow £40,000 to, make the front of their shop look nicer, the guy might want to buy a car as well, so they can do all that in the same funder. Another great question. That is one of the most beneficial things you'll learn in business and in life. Relationships that you build with people will be the backbone of any business you have. Whether it's selling something, whether it's providing a service. If you build a relationship with someone, it builds faith in that person. You can build relationships in any shape or form as well, with regards to interest in common sports, what those persons do, what they buy. There's so many traits that you can pick up on. But people buy from people. You might have heard that before. It's so true. People will follow people to whatever businesses they go as well. I think it's quite an important thing to try and learn very early on. Relationships are everything in business.
Good morning, Lewis. Thank you for agreeing to come onto the podcast.
Good morning.
If we get started into early life, please, could you just give a quick introduction about yourself, who you are, what values do you have from your upbringing, and which you carry in your life now?
Wow, that's a question. My early life, I was born and raised in Newport, South Wales. I have always been involved, and my family involved in sales. My first job was at British Car Auctions. I've then stayed throughout the motor trade pretty much my entire life. The values I have, I would say, just treat people how you would like to be treated. I think if you go into conversations, life, it just is a reflection on yourself, and I think how you present yourself is probably one of the most important lessons you'll learn in life.
The career development and pathways. Did you know what you wanted to be when you were younger, and what options did you take in school to lead you to where you are now?
So I wasn't the best person for having a career path. I kind of fell into what I'm doing. I would say to anyone who's younger, and especially because I have a son as well, that get an idea of what you want to do, work towards it. It might not even be the career path that you want to do, but it will put you in good standing to have things to target yourself toward and to work toward. It sets you up very, very well. I think it's difficult to say when you're young what you want to do because things in life change, and things you'll do now will be completely different from things you'll want to do in 3 years' time. I think people work towards materialistic things quite a lot, and you'll never want anything you have. Well, you'll never want anything you want now in 3 years' time. Things change. Is what the best advice I give to that.
What was your first job, and what key lessons have you learned from your career?
What have I learned in my career from my first job?
Yeah, just in general.
I think it's good to take your time. I think a lot of people will rush into a conversation I think it's good to be natural. I think it's good to listen. I think one of the most important things you can learn in business is to listen to people, because people will quite normally want to get their point across, which is fine and understandable as human nature. But I think that when you listen, you can gather a lot more information that can sometimes change your outcome decision, and you'll learn a lot more.
What is your ultimate career goal, and did you have a plan when you set out on your career to where you want to go from then to now?
So no, I didn't have a career plan as such. For me, sales was something I wanted to get into. I've progressed now furthermore from sales into management, but I would say sales was appealing because it was very rewarding financially. I think it's very good for someone who's very incentivized as a person, because you want to push yourself more. So if you like sports as well, like it's very similar, because you'll always want to try and better yourself from your last performance, and they say you're only as good as your last month. Um, I would say career wise, it's good to aim for the top. People will laugh and joke to younger people with regards to wanting to. If someone comes in and says they want to be, a CEO, like why not? Because I've seen people go from a lower down position to a much higher position in a very small period of time. I think it's how you apply yourself. I think it's your attitude. And I think, again, listening is probably one of the best lessons you can learn. Taking on board what people tell you can set you up very, very well. If you want to succeed in anything, though, I think you need to um, apply yourself. You need to go that extra mile is really important. So if you set a task, don't just do the task. Think about what you can do over and above and work towards that to try and make yourself stand out from others is important. I think if people adapt that attitude, it will work very well.
What has been the biggest challenge that you have faced in your career?
The biggest challenge, there's always regular challenges. I think the biggest challenge anyone can come up against is themselves. I think you have to sometimes in a work environment things can get very repetitive, and you have to apply yourself. You have to dig deep on the days that are not good. You have to make yourself stand out at the times that when people are low. I think everyone can celebrate the good times, but I think when it's bad, and the people who dig deep and the people who work through it and make sure they can do everything they can, they're the people that will succeed. I think that's a rule for life as well. No matter what you're doing, I think if you just give it your all and plan, is so many fundamentals to it. There's planning, attitude, all these things can come into play. And I think if you just need to evaluate your day and plan your day. I see a lot of people who are new to the business and they come in to do, not necessarily in the job that I'm doing, but in general life. I think if you plan your day, so you have a structure to it, because sometimes you think you don't have time to do certain things, but we all have time to talk and have conversations and go and have a cup of coffee. I think if you plan your day properly, it gives you a much better standing for the full day.
How difficult is it when working in finance? What type of contract do you work off? Do you have a base salary and then in commission, or do you in?
It varies. So you'll have in many areas of business, you'll have commission and bonus and basic wages. So primarily, people will have a set basic wage, which generally in sales or any form of selling will be a slightly lower basic salary. You'll then have commission, which you'll get paid commission for selling products or services, and then bonuses can then, which people sometimes misunderstand what a bonus and a commission is. They're two very different things. A commission is what you'll be paid for doing something. A bonus is achieving over and above. Um, but yeah, it can be very financially rewarding no matter what you're selling, no matter what you're doing. Financial services are very different kettle of fish to if you're just selling a loaf of bread in the supermarket, because there's so many more rules and regulations around it. You have to be making sure that you're conducting yourself in a certain manner, that you're making people aware of services you offer so they can make informed decisions. But like I said, it's very rewarding.
If you don't generate enough income or sales from your job, result.
Sorry, can you repeat that? It broke up then.
Yeah. If you don't generate enough income or sales from your job, can you be easily replaced or fired as a result?
If people underperform, so obviously people can go through a process of performance management if they underperform. I think, like I said, you need to gear yourself up for the basics. Sometimes people very much overthink these things. If you have a set task to, say, for example, sell a certain amount of TVs or whatever it may be, and you have to sell 10, like generally it's your attitude towards it. So if personally for me, someone said you had to sell 10 TVs, I would go and try and sell 15. I think if you aim high, you can always underachieve and still get to where you need to be. But it's setting yourself a personal goal, and where you want to be. Can you get fired? Well, of course, you can get fired if someone was underperforming in a role. They could be replaced, but they would have to. Before that happens, they would generally go on like a performance management to see, why that's happening, what can they do to improve it. Some people would look at that as a negative. I would look at that more as a positive, because if someone's not doing the job properly and they're underachieving, then there's a reason for it, and you have to find out what that reason may be and try and help people to the best of your ability.
What what fin
Sorry, the line broke up then again.
what finance options are there?
What finance options are there? Well, we live in a world when there's so many things available to us for funding. You can fund pretty much anything now, from going into a shop and buying trainers and having 0% finance over 3 months via your mobile phone. You can finance a car, you can finance a house, you can finance a plane. Um, Funding is structured differently. People go to private schools, they can even be funding their tuition fees for their schools via certain companies. So there's so many different funding options available. It depends on what you're really trying to achieve by the finance you want to take out. Obviously, I've worked in car finance for quite a long time, so car finance is not one of the more simple ways of doing it. But you can either have straightforward hire purchase finance, when you would fund a product and own it at the end of the payments complete, or you could have something called a PCP, when you would buy a car and you'd have a final payment, which is somewhat like a pre-calculated settlement figure. So you would therefore have slightly cheaper monthly payments in the interim. You could have contract hire when you're renting a product over a set period of time. So in the world of finance, there is so many things that you can do. People can borrow money against houses. You can borrow money against property. So yeah, it's really endless. If someone wants to get into the world of finance, there is so many things you can do. I think that's a very big area that I see banks like Lloyd's and NatWest and big, high street banks that people would know, branching out into that area a lot more now, because there's a very big gap in the market for small business, I think, and banks want to be in those areas when they can fund shop fronts, if someone owns a shop and they want to borrow £40,000 to, make the front of their shop look nicer, the guy might want to buy a car as well, so they can do all that in the same funder. So really, it's awareness again, and going back to my point, if you put yourself in those situations when you're talking to people and you're trying to overachieve as best you can, then you can put yourself in those surroundings to have those opportunities.
Is there a set assessment you have to do before financing out a car?
Um, for the customer or the person who's selling it?
Either or.
So if you sell financial products, then yes, you'd have to be regulated. You'd have to carry out something called a SAF test every year to make sure that you're qualified to be able to sell that customer a product. If you're the customer, you'd have to go through a finance proposal. If it were a car, for example, I'll give you that situation. You would have to go through something called a demands and needs form to make sure that you've informed that customer to the best of your ability and you've made them aware of all the products that you offer as a business. The customer would then do a financial proposal to see if they qualify for the finance and if they're accepted. And then if they're accepted, obviously that leads on to them essentially coming to sign the finance documents when they collect the car and take the car away.
And what companies do you use for finance?
What companies? So as a business, through the company that I use, you
Yeah.
would use generally with motortrade, they use the manufacturer's lender would be the first point of call. They also use big high street banks like Lloyd's that would in car finance would be Black Horse. There's other then lenders if someone was less successful on their application and can then have other financial companies made available to them. There's a big string of lenders out there. I think there's a lot of choice for a customer now.
What would you say the benefits of finance are?
The benefits of finance.
Yeah.
So if you're buying a car, I would say it's not so much the borrowing of the money because a lot of people will want to go into a car dealer, for example, and have a conversation about interest rates and how much it's costing, and everything varies. So you'll have one loan that's so much, another loan that's so much, but it's more the concept of buying a car on finance through the provider that's the benefit, because all the agreements are monitored. They then are in a cycle when people will change on a regular basis. I think it's very much geared up to the customer these days. But the point of financing is to make something affordable to yourself and to free your own money up in the interim of owning the product or whatever you're purchasing. To invest all your money into something that's a depreciating asset over a set period of time, I would say isn't one of the smartest moves. If you Google it, most cars will depreciate within half their value in a 3-year period. So, for example, if you had a £20,000 car, so let's just take it, £20,000 divided by 36 months, £550 a month over 3 years is what that car will cost you interest free. £20,000 divided by 2, divided by, let me work this out. Let's say a £30,000 car divided by 2 is £15,000, divided by 36 is £416 a month. If you buy that car cash, it's going to cost you £416 a month, regardless if you finance it or you pay cash for it. So if you could do a plan when you're paying £416 a month, funding it, all you're doing then is pretty much paying the depreciation of the car and the interim of owning it. So it makes sense. Apologies for my bad maths then, but I'm under pressure here on a podcast. I think I need a drink of water.
What is the biggest misconception? That's fine. What is the biggest misconception when working in a car dealership and managing finance?
I think people are very anti-finance to a certain way because people think that it's bad when really it's not. I just think it depends on the individual. Some people buy into it and they really understand it and they change their car on a regular basis. It's a much easier conversation to have with someone in 3 years' time if they bought a car, if they funded, because they won't have to put in huge amounts of money every time. They're not having big service bills. They're not having no warranty. They're not having no roadside recovery. The cost of running the car between when they've purchased it, the 28 to 36 months when they change it, is very low. If someone buys a car and they pay for it and they change it in 4 years' time, imagine they could have had something go wrong with it. They would have put tires on the car. They would have had an expensive service. Like £1,000 a month. £1,000 is about £80 a month over a 12-month period. So if you have one service and it costs you £800 to £1,000, it's cost you so much more than if you funded it and changed it on a regular basis. Also, as well, it was very strange in COVID times because car prices went through the roof. So we had people who were financing cars. They were coming back in 6 months and changing them because the cars were worth more than what they paid for them at that period of time. So that was an interesting exercise. That never normally happens. It's not happened that many times in my career, but there have been anomalies when someone has bought a car, they funded it and they brought it back and the car's worth more. So those are very, very easy conversations. I'm not sure if I've lost you, Sam.
There you go.
I think you lost connection there.
Yeah, it lost me for a second as well. I don't hear the one question or the answer. Sorry. Do you want me to repeat the question?
If you can, yeah, I think it dropped off.
Yeah. What is the biggest misconception when we're in the car dealership and managing finance?
I think it depends on the person that you're talking to, because people have very different opinions. I would say some people are fire from the hip. Some people take a lot more time to make decisions. I think it very much depends on the individual, but the concept of funding is people don't warm towards it that well. I would say, like I answered the question previously, I don't know how much of it you got, but people who change their car on a more frequent basis is an easier conversation to have with someone who keeps it for a longer period of time because of the depreciation of the car. Yeah, it very much depends on the individual, I would say.
What do you look for in a car when a car acts, and what strategy do you use to ensure you know as a company you're getting the highest income?
That's a good question. So when you look at a part exchange, you'll look at where cost you're looking for basically. You're looking for things that are gonna cost money, like tires. Is it due a service? But a value of a car is a not so much a straightforward thing to do, because if you look on a computer and it tells you your car's worth £10,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what the car is worth. So experience will get you to the point when you will be able to make those decisions as to what the value of the car actually is. I would say trends is probably one of the biggest thing. I'll give you a good example of this. People look on the internet.
There we go.
Have you got me?
Yeah, it's back now.
People, I don't know how much of that you got. You asked me about the value of a car. I think it depends on. People look at trends. So they'll look at, for example, Auto Trader. If someone goes on Auto Trader to buy a car, they'll look at patterns from like 50 to 60,000 miles. So if you've got like £20,000 to spend, you'll go on Auto Trader, you'll search for a car, you'll look at a car between 40 and 50,000 miles, which means that car won't appear up on your search. So, for example, if a car comes in part exchange and it's done 105,000 miles, I can pretty much tell you that no person is going to search on the internet for a car with 105,000 miles because it's gone over that six-figure mileage point. So that would have a detrimental impact to the price of the car. That would be one example.
How do you build relationships with people, and what the purpose behind that?
Sorry, that came through. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. How do you build relationships with people, and what is the purpose behind that?
Another great question. That is one of the most beneficial things you'll learn in business and in life. Relationships that you build with people will be the backbone of any business you have, whether it's selling something, whether it's providing a service. If you build a relationship with someone, it builds faith in that person. You can build relationships in any shape or form as well, with regards to interest in common sports, what those persons do, what they buy. There's so many traits that you can pick up on. But people buy from people. You might have heard that before. It's so true. People will follow people to whatever businesses they go as well. I think it's quite an important thing to try and learn very early on. Relationships are everything in business. And I think if you can start by building relationships as quickly as you can, that's a very good backbone to any business.
How do you build the loyalty of your customers and continue to sell the cars to them?
How do we get loyalty?
Yeah, for customers.
You'll get loyalty from people by doing exactly what you said. So I would say never overpromise and underdeliver. Stick to what you say and only promise what you can actually do. Don't do things. Don't say you'll do things that you can't. If someone asks you a question and you can't do it, just tell them, and they'll respect you so much more for telling them the truth. And I think that's a very good starting point. And I think if you do exactly what you said you'll do, then that's the first thing of building a relationship. Relationships are built over time; they're not built in 5 minutes. And it's doing what you said you do, looking after those people. You don't have to be the cheapest in any product you sell. You have to deliver a service. When people buy something, they want value, and the value not necessarily is price. Value can be the service you'll get.
What would you say break down relationships?
What breaks down relationships?
Yeah.
In a negative way.
Yeah.
So things that will break down a relationship would be not doing what you said you were going to do. So for example, if a sales exec said they were going to, let's just say, for example, get a flashing aerial fitted to a car, I don't know, and they didn't do it. And then what that person can then do is not be there, so someone else has to deal with that problem. And then by doing that, they're losing all faith in the person they've dealt with in the first place. If you say you're going to do something, do it and go over and above, not under deliver. Breaking down relationships is easily done, but it's normally done. Like, you can have an issue. Everyone has issues and everyone has problems, and we all make mistakes because we're all human. But it's how you deal with that problem. So sometimes you can have an issue. You can overcome that issue, and that will build the faith in the customer to the salesperson, because there's been a problem, but it's how you've dealt with it that's made them, have more faith in you.
Marketing. It's important to market yourself within your line of work. So how do you market yourself?
We're constrained these days to what we're allowed to do. But if I had to answer that question from a business point of view, it's one of the most powerful things. We live in 2025 with the ability to do podcasts, streams, social media. So presence is everything. I think if you have anything to sell, you want to make people aware of it. If you have, so here's a scenario for you. If you have a car dealership and you have 5 red cars out the back and 1 blue car at the front, you'll never sell the red cars because people can't see them. If you put the red cars in the showroom, you'll sell a red car because it's there. People will generally want to buy what's in front of them. There's always been a scenario when people go, oh, I didn't think I was going to buy that today. That's very common. You'll go into Curry's and you'll buy a TV because it's Black Friday because there's a special price. Like, if people are aware of things, they're very likely to make a decision, even if the decision's no. But the probability of them making a yes is much higher if they're in that situation of a yes or a no. And I think the more social media, the more marketing, the more Twitter, the more, or X these days, isn't it? The more you brand yourself and put yourself out there, the higher opportunity. They say, throw something at a wall and it'll stick. It's very true. Like, the more you put out there, the more successful you'll be with a reward.
How do you ensure that your team is organized?
How are you sure your team's recognized? Organized. Okay. Like I said at the start, I think it's how you prepare your day. You can have meetings, but it ultimately boils down to the individual, because you have to be organized in what you're doing. And it starts from the bottom up. If you have your sales team organized, then the knock-on effect, if you like, because if someone's organized and they go through the motions of what they need to do, and it creates less stress on other departments, and in doing that, everyone has an easier workflow. So I think it's a lot of it's teamwork, because you do work as a team in these environments, but every individual needs to help your colleagues, help your team, but generally be as organized as you possibly can. The better organized you are, the less issues you'll have. Even if you find an issue, it's how you deal with it then, like I said, and dealing with it as promptly as possible.
And what are your top tips for making people trust you when selling/financing a car?
Be honest, have integrity. Like, nobody wants to be told something that's not factual or be given. We work in a world that, from, for example, car sales, people look at car sales like, he's a car salesman. They're not going to tell the truth. We're the most regulated business out there. We have to be with the best integrity that we possibly can. Like I said, if you don't tell people the whole truth as clearly as you possibly can, we wouldn't have a business. So it's very important to gain that retention business, and by doing that, you're building trust in people. So you have to make sure that you're acting at the utmost integrity, and making sure people are aware, but just dealing with people in the right manner. Everyone's human as well, so they want to be spoken to in the right way. So you have to be, you have to make sure that you're just having a sensible conversation. Don't overthink it. Just be yourself. Have a sensible conversation with people. Find out what build the rapport with the common interests, and have a chat with them. Get to know people like you would in a bar. There's no difference. Like, what would the difference be having a conversation with someone in a pub to having a conversation with someone in a car showroom? Nothing. Obviously maybe less swear words, I don't know, but it's having a sensible, nice conversation, treating people fairly, and they get to know you, and people then they'll trust you, and want to ask for your advice. And you don't so much give people advice these days, you just make them aware of all their options, and they can make an informed decision from that.
The question we have today is, where do you want to end up in 5 years' time?
5 years time, well, I would say my ultimate goal would be to become maybe a general sales manager of a dealership, and then ultimately, I suppose, if you want to aim high, to go for like a head of business, maybe. I'm 42, so I've got a good 10-15 years left in my career to sort of get to that point. And I think if I knuckle down and apply myself, there's no reason why you can't, with the plans that are put in place these days for progression, why that can't happen.
No, that's everything we have to say, Lewis. So thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.